Greetings, humans! Today on Exploring Limitations, we're going to do a thorough dive into one of the most ultimate limitations, recording a drum kit with one microphone. Here we go! Do you visit the internet? I visit the internet. There are so many tutorials out there on how to mic a drum kit because it's complicated. I've certainly gone through the ringer and all the various styles, and I can easily throw up 12 microphones if I have enough inputs. But in the spirit of this channel, can you get a decent sound with just one? In particular, just one of these. Yes, I know this one is paper, but we used a real one in the experiment. Are you interested? I am. In order to employ this one mic on a drum kit technique, you're gonna need 4 things. Number 1, a good drummer. Number 2, drums that sound good. Number 3, one microphone. And number 4, a means with which to record said microphone. In this case, we used a Tascam Porta 2 4-track cassette recorder. For today, luckily for me, the number 1 was fulfilled. Sander Bryce is helping us out with this experiment today. He's a Berkeley grad and has toured all over the US with multiple projects. His main ones right now are a duo called Haunter and a band called Really From. Go follow Sander on Instagram at SanderBryce777. We recorded the audio and filmed this experiment over at Mirrortone Studios in Manhattan. I guess it's that way. No, it's that way. No, it's that way. Far, unscripted. Before I say anything else, I must re-emphasize, it's very important. You must have a great drummer who knows how to tune drums if you do not know how to tune drums. This has to be your starting point. Then you will be surprised at how good a single microphone on a drum kit can sound. With that, let's get to the experiment. At Mirrortone, we set up a stereo bar to hold 3 little dynamic microphones. Classic mic shootout setup. Then we had Sander play 3 beats while recording to cassette. Once he finished, we moved the mics to a different position and had him play the exact same 3 beats. This way, when you're comparing these mics, you hear the exact same performance. Woohoo! Before I even get into mic placement, each of these mics sounds so different, and that's about to become very obvious. We had Sander record some tom fills at the very end, so I'm gonna play you a tom fill. The Electro Voice 635A is on channel 1. It's an omnidirectional dynamic microphone. Now let's listen to this drum fill. Hell yeah. The old standby, the Shure SM57, is on channel 2. Every studio has many of these, except mine right now, and it's got a regular cardioid pickup pattern. Let's hear that drum fill. Snappy. The Bayer Dynamic M201 is on channel 3. The Dark Horse. This baby's got a hypercardioid pickup pattern. Let's listen to that drum fill. It sounds so good. Right, Jonah? That was your favorite. Again, let's listen to them back to back. Pretty neat, huh? I should quickly mention the sounds that you're hearing today come from the cassette. No compression or EQ was employed in this experiment at all. Now, moving on to mic placement. First position. This first position is colloquially referred to as crotch position, and I'm not joking. You can see that the mics are basically right above the kick drum, pointed at the snare. So let's have a listen. Rock beat. Onto the jazz beat. Wow, really interesting. One thing is, I hate the 57 for this. It sounds like a joke microphone in a bad way. Uh, but it's really like a toss up between, do you want a dark sound on the 635 or a clearer sound with the 201? Very interesting. Let's go on to the hip hop beat in crotch position. I really focus on a kick drum in the hip hop beat. And again, you kind of have a choice. The 635A gives the kick drum makes it sound like a more traditional, boomy, pillowy kick drum. And then the 201 has more punch and more clarity. And they're both good. And the 57 is a little bit better here. Still not my favorite. Okay, that was crotch position. Now moving on to second position. Front of the kit. This was basically a similar height to crotch position, but pulled further back in front of the drum kit. You're still pointing at the snare drum, but the theory here is that you'll get more kick drum. But let's see what happens. Rock beat. I like this position a lot. For this rock beat, the front of the kit is my favorite so far. And I think I remember it being my favorite that day. Let's see how it fares against the jazz beat. You get a lot of kick drum, and I would say that for that genre, none of them would be good, but but I like the Omni mic. The Omni mic fits well for the jazz genre, I would say. So let's move on to that hip hop beat. This is the one where I don't mind the 57 the least. I still prefer the other two. But let's move positions, shall we? Onto the third position. Overhead. Very common mic technique for drums. I like to keep about 2.5 to 3 drumsticks in height, with the capsules pointing somewhere between the kick and the snare when you're looking over it. You'll notice that Sander is a lefty drummer, a true lefty, which is uncommon, but guess what? It's just a mirror. It's nothing. There's still an in-between the kick and the snare. So that being said, let's have a listen to the rock beat. Isn't it crazy how much the balance of the kit changes just from that position? It seems like it would be so obvious, but now we're getting much more snare drum and much more cymbals. And to be honest, for rock and roll, none of these is a good solo mic sound for me, for the stuff that I like to do. But if I had to choose one, I would go with the Omni sound, because it is capturing a little bit more of a flattened picture. The 57, that microphone clearly loves snare drum, because the snare drum's popping on that. Listen to that real quick again. Woo! It's popping. It's almost like feels like you mic'd the snare from 3 feet away. Let's continue on to the jazz beat. This is not so bad. This is not so bad for this genre. You know, in jazz, if it's real jazz, the ride cymbal and the double bass are kind of the main driving timekeepers of the music. I don't hate these drum sounds. 635A does sound nostalgic to me somehow, out of context, with no music around it. So that would be my choice for that one. So let's move on to the hip-hop beat with an overhead microphone setup. Yeah, similar. None of them is great, but I do like the Bear Dynamic M201. It's catching more of that kick drum, maybe because of the hypercardioid pattern. Who knows? Again, I cannot overstate how interesting it is that the SM57 feels like a snare drum vacuum. I've never really isolated a 57 3 feet away from a snare drum. It sounds like I mic'd the snare drum and there's bleed. It's pretty crazy. But with that, on to the fourth position. For this last position, we just pulled the mics far, far away. Obviously, this technique only works if people are isolated enough. In other words, not all tracking in the same room. But I was definitely curious what would happen. Reminder, I normally would compress the heck out of a microphone in this particular situation, but you are hearing the naked sound. Naked! So let's listen to that rock beat. These are interesting room mic sounds that I would have as a room mic. For a solo microphone for a rock beat, I don't like them. But between those, I think the M201, if you had to choose, like I only have one mic and I want rock and roll and I want a room sound, the M201 is giving you a lot. On to the jazz beat. I think with this beat, since the drums aren't being hit very loud, you're not moving enough air for it to work really well as a solo mic. That's just my opinion. Again, this is experiment. I would again have to choose the M201 if you had to put a gun to my head for this. You can only record these jazz drums with one microphone in a room tone. Which one are you gonna pick? It's the M201, please. It's just the most detailed. So let's move on to the hip-hop beat. Yep, similar to what's already been said. I like the 635A, it's darker, and the M201 is detailed, and the SM57 is a snare drum vacuum. Funny how it became the standard for snare drums. Now, I can't have gone through all this work and not give you, the people, just a little cut of my favorite mic for each beat to show how placement affects the balance and tone of the kit. So I'm just gonna play a rapid succession between mic placements of just one of the flavors of mic. Ready? Here we go. Jazz beat. Hip-hop beat. there you have it. I was super duper excited by the results of this experiment. I've done crotch mic techniques in the past, but more as a augmenting or an effect microphone for a fully mic'd drum kit. Seems to me like with a great drummer and a good sounding kit, a great drummer and a good sounding kit, you could really throw up a single microphone and get a pretty killer sound. Again, no EQ or compression. This is the Al Schmidt pick the right microphone in your locker technique. What do you think? Did one of these microphones come through as your overall favorite amongst the three? Did you have a preferred microphone placement like I did? Speaking of the mics, all three of these mics have a place in my heart and in my ears. There is no one microphone that definitively wins at every placement today, although I tended to prefer the darker EV635, but man, that M201 was just always, it seemed always so detailed and kind of correct sounding, not as colored. I suppose the 57 then was my least favorite in this context next to the other two in general. Again, the thing about the 57 that I learned, that I kind of already knew, but I really know now, is it loves snare drums. It's like, oh, there's a snare drum. Oh, I'm a 57. I'm gonna catch that snare drum, and you're gonna hear that snare drum. It's just got a really weird, hyped mid-range, but we love it. Gotta love the 57, and you have to admit, without context of a mix, maybe some of those would have worked better than the other two. These are my thoughts. You must take them with a grain of salt, always. Your style of music, your genre, and instrumentation are all huge factors of how well this technique will work in your mix. I must admit, the older that I get, the stronger I prefer a kick-ass drummer with a good sounding kit with only 2 or 4 microphones overall on the drums. But now, hopefully after today, after watching this video, you'll be brave enough to stick one mic in front of the drum kit. Tracks are very precious on the cassette, obviously. There are only 4, so capturing a rhythm section with one mic on the drums can really be a solid method, especially with these limitations. But with everything else in life, you have to take time to experiment. Have fun, experiment, figure it out. Don't get too caught in the weeds though. We're making music. The music is always number one. It's always the most important thing. I hope that comes through in all of the things that I talk about. Again, thank you for watching. I'd like to thank my patrons over on Patreon. I am literally nothing without their support. Links to that and all of my original music and where you can pick up one of my cassettes is in links down below in that description box that YouTube has conveniently placed below my talking head. Go check it out. And with that, as always, is peace and be good to each other. I feel self-conscious knowing someone else is gonna look at this. Jonah. Anyway.